Welcome to Flights of Fancy, Books and Brews.
I'm Dan Norbury,
Walter Brown.
and today we're going to be discussing a memoir of the craft by Stephen King. It is NaNoWriMo, National Writing with a Novel Month, however that is. Right. We thought it'd be a good time to take a step back and look at a more of an instructional memoir than to go into a whole new book of fiction or fantasy.
If I wake and tomorrow's gone, at least I love the part.
Hey, we're back with our second flight. And of course, we're joined by the great Kevin Goldhahn up there in Astoria, New York, with his 2020 single, May the Day Shine, A Million Sweethearts. His former band was the Gantry. Check him out. Amazing stuff. Of course, we'll have his all his deets and Spotify links so you can check out this great band. And of course, if you're in the New York metro area, check out his gigs. Great stuff. So thank you, Kevin. Great tunes for hopefully what will be a great podcast. This is Allagash out of Portland, Maine. My wife and I love Maine. Allagash is a great brewery. This is a bourbon barrel aged golden ale blended with cold brew coffee. It's 9.6%. Did you drink it yet?
No, I've been waiting for you to stop talking. Very smooth. You can taste the coffee. You can smell the 9.6, but as soon as it goes to your tongue, you think it's going to have the acidity to it, and it doesn't. It just goes down smooth. We're back to the fancy portion. So in the memoir part, it's very interesting because at first you feel like it's typical Stephen King. Like he's talking way too much about stuff that has nothing to do with why you bought the book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is one of his downfalls. So he writes literally at the end of the foreword, he writes, omit unnecessary words.
That comes from Struck and White.
Yeah,
That's
Rule 17, omit unnecessary words. And then the very next thing on the tape is third foreword. And it goes into the third foreword of the book. And I was like, wow, 3 forewords and you're worried about us omitting words?
Yeah.
But we digress. You get this feeling that he's not talking about writing at all until you start to see that everything he's talking about are things that actually informed his writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like there are parts where you can see, oh, he's talking, that inspired him to write The Shining. That inspired him to write this.
Misery was his drug addiction.
Right. And so when he's going, even as a young kid, you can see it. Like he was talking about this one job that he had at this laundry place in Lisbon Falls, which I lived at for a while. He was talking about how they would get these sheets from all these like seafood restaurants, like you were just talking about, and how by the time they got them, they were like, tourists would come, they'd broken lobsters or lobster guts. It was in the back of a truck all day. By the time they got to them, they were like filled with maggots. And the way he's describing it, I suddenly flash back to the way he was describing the hobo in it. And I was like, oh my God, this is where that idea came from. So a lot of the memoir, although at first on surface value it seems like it adds nothing, it really adds a lot, in my opinion.
Right. As an English teacher, it really hit me is that here he is, just normal everyday kid. He's not a standout. He's not he's not going to be the valedictorian, but someone who's really into movies, going to like the science fiction, the horror films of the 50s, double features. He started just writing, and like a lot of the writers like Thoreau and Whitman and Hawthorne and the guy who wrote The Martian, he self-published, right? And he was handing out his book.
He was selling.
He was selling. No, he was
As a child, he was selling a written version of one of the movies he had seen.
Right.
Which is great.
Right. And kids were buying it. And then, nothing's better than getting paid for your writing. I mean, it's really hard for writers out there to be compensated. We're almost like slave labor.
Yeah, and he sold out too.
He did.
He was counting his whole next run.
Right. And then the teacher confiscated it and said, Stephen King, you'll never get anywhere writing this trash.
I don't think he quite said that. I think you're internalizing some of that.
No, I'm not. She actually did say that. I could find it, chapter verse, but...
No, but she says something similar to that, or the principal says something similar to that. It's more of, we wouldn't let students sell their works, especially when it's trash like this.
Right.
I don't think she said you're not going to get anywhere with it.
No,
but I could be wrong. But let's not pick over that. Okay. The big thing here is...
The man was stepping on him.
Yeah, as much as the memoir seems to be fluff, every experience you have as a writer informs, or as a person, informs the writer that you're going to be.
Exactly.
And you can see that through all the stories he tells. And he tells some really good, amusing stories there that really add dimension to Stephen King that you didn't recognize before. And I love the story when he finally makes it big and he sells Carrie for the first time, and how, where he was in his life at that point and how much that truly changed everything for him.
Right. Especially since, I always tell, the mantra is write about what you know. And I always give this analogy like you're this ball of clay and you just roll around in everything. Like Whitman's a child went forth, and that child became the thing that he saw. And we accumulate all of these things every single day from the time we're born. And there's stuff deep, deep, deep embedded in us that we don't even see anymore. But there's been more clay over the years, and it's there. You just have to do some excavation and some digging to get there. And if you're not writing about what you know and feel, it's going to feel like you're telegraphing it. Sort of like Stephen Crane in The Red Badge of Courage. I don't like that book because, number one, I feel like he just read newspaper accounts of the Civil War and wrote about it. So why Moby Dick and Conrad feels so real is because they lived it. Doesn't he call it like writing down the bones or something? Or Stephen King? About, you get the DNA.
Yeah, that's in the craft about that. Right. So my question to you is, pick one of those 3 times, either as a child, as a teenager, or as an adult, and tell me, in brevity, that informed you as a writer today, which was an experience from that period.
I write a lot of nonfiction, like David Sedaris kind of stuff. So it's like I'm a fiction writer, but I probably have more nonfiction published than fiction. And even my fiction is a little Romana Clef. It's like Novel with a Key. It's like it's sort of like The Bell Jar, right? Or any Fitzgerald novel. It's like, I know, we'll get into it. No, stop. So I read a lot of memoir stuff, right? A lot of first person, funny stuff. When it comes to fiction, I remember, because everything my family, it didn't matter if I wrote a song that was so bad, everyone would say it's good, because my family I love them. They're very supportive, but it's almost like I didn't trust any of their opinion. No criticism can stick to my family, even if we're lathered with like Gorilla Glue. I wrote a story on purpose called The Dead Cat. I wrote it on purpose to be purposely
so where
horrible.
Are you a child, a teenager, or?
I'm like at 14, 15.
Okay, so you're, okay.
Right, and I wrote it just to catch people because my mom said, "Oh, Walter, this is so good." So I didn't trust her after. I eventually did reinvestigate that whole episode and like why I did that.
Was it a test of them or a test of yourself?
I think it was both. It was a test of them and critics and people that give you like false hope that you're so good, but maybe you're not good.
Okay, so now in this class I'm taking, one of the things they tell you to say at the end is, okay, what this story says about me as a writer is what?
That I need to be able to trust my own instincts and not, and this is very hard for me because I'm a person that needs a million people clapping, feel good about myself. That's why I love teaching, because there's an audience there 5 times at end, and if they're not clapping, or if they're not laughing, or if they're not, engaged, man, I am not feeling. So it's like the comedian, right? It's during, especially COVID, I was in my bag, man. I was bad because it's like Robin Williams. It's not that as bad as Robin Williams, but when they stop clapping, when you don't have that immediate feedback, and it's like my grandfather, who was a musician, and he was a piano man and did very well, but he loved entertaining. I love entertaining, and being a writer, it's so hard because you don't hear people laughing or crying in their bedrooms. But in the classroom, I do. But as a writer, it's very hard. That's why I like being on stage, because I get that feedback immediately. But I need to trust in myself and not have to get so much external attaboys.
All right, so I'm going to pick an incident from my adulthood. I was probably 25.
25.
A little bit, maybe a little bit older.
I was 25 too, man.
Yeah, we all were at some time. Yeah. I had written, it was the novel that I was writing, Thursday's Child. It was a mystery novel set in 1940-ish Atlantic City. so right after the war
Okay.
in Atlantic City. Yeah,
Steel
Steel
Pier?
Pier,
The
big
hi- the
band
heyday.
music,
The
the
heyday.
heyday, right? And it featured a black narrator
Ooh.
told in first person perspective,
Ooh.
and I had written it, and our friend Brian Keating, our music
Yeah.
friend Brian Keating,
Great guy.
he read it, and he read it out loud, and he read it out loud. And that was the first time I'd ever heard someone else read something that I wrote out loud.
That's
and it sounded exactly the way I wanted it to in my head. And I was like, that's wow. And I was like, wow, that's the first time. And he looked at me and said, you really have something here. Now, the unfortunate part is that was
Did you burn that?
That was 20 years. No, I didn't burn that. It was 20 years ago. I still have hundreds of pages of it.
Why don't you resurrect that thing?
Well, because I don't know. There's a market for a white guy telling a black man's story.
Oh my God! I was
first person
perspective it's called
these days.
a white man splaining.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah, but here's Shakespeare wrote Othello.
Yeah.
And Iago, and not Iago. Like Shylock.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I get it.
Yeah.
No.
And I'd argue he didn't write either of those characters.
Okay. Whoever composed it.
I'm not saying those characters are not good examples of writing, representing a race within a.
Right.
Within
That's
a
true.
work.
That's true.
But
we still write women characters.
Yeah, I get it.
Maybe we don't do it
It's
well.
just a little bit more sensitive.
It is.
Maybe 5 years.
Even when you said it, I'm like,
maybe I can find a ghostwriter to do it. I don't know.
Or you go under a nom de guerre.
And I remember too because I was writing it specifically. I specifically wrote that character because of you.
What?
Yeah. Because of your snobbery. Because you were even a bigger snob then. Right?
I was.
So I was,
and not as lovable.
I was trying to prove a point that somebody who didn't sound educated could still be very intelligent and have a lot of depth to them. A character that you would look at and dismiss.
Yeah,
could be a character with a lot of depth and a lot of.
Now I realize
knowledge.
that the more educated you are, the less smart you are.
Well, that's a whole other story. So okay, good. So that's the memoir section. So again, to recap the memoir section.
Man, I love this. I love to go back and talk for hours about memoir. I love to talk about myself because I'm a navel gazer.
Okay, we can do all that later.
I was born,
but
poor white
the craft part that we're going to get into next is where he actually gives concrete advice to writers about how to write better.